Hello and welcome to DMA Center Stage. I'm your host, Hal Pittman. Our guest today is the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, the Honorable Denis McDonough. Welcome, Mr. Secretary.
Thanks for having me, Hal. It's great to be with you.
The VA is responsible for administering benefit programs for veterans, their families, and survivors, including pensions, education, disability compensation, home loans, life insurance, vocational rehab, survivor support, burial benefits, and medical care. And in fact, our discussion today kicks off on one of the largest healthcare expansions in VA history, the PACT Act. The PACT Act was signed into law by the President last August and expands VA healthcare and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic substances. Since the passage of the law, more than 360,000 veterans and survivors have applied for benefits, and more than 2.1 million veterans have been screened for toxic exposures. Secretary McDonough, again, we really appreciate you being here today, joining us to talk about the VA and in particular this landmark legislation. Let's talk a little bit about the PACT Act. Who does it apply to, and what does it cover?
Yeah, so thanks, Hal. It's great to be here with you, and thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to our amazing force and the families. The PACT Act does two really important things. It says, first, if you're a Vietnam vet, you're exposed to Agent Orange, and today you have high blood pressure, hypertension, we now can connect your hypertension to your service in Vietnam. That connection allows you access to greater care at VA facilities and greater benefits. So any of the troopers or family members who are watching today and they have a family member, a dad, an uncle, aunt, mom, sister, brother, Vietnam vet with hypertension, please ask them to file a claim. Second, it says to those troopers and family members, and importantly survivors, of the nearly 4 million active duty and veterans now who served in Central Command from Operation Desert Storm back in 1991 all the way through the end of the Afghan deployment in the summer of 2021, so 30 years of war. If you were anywhere in CENTCOM at that time, on the ground, in the sea, in the air, you qualify potentially for expanded benefits and expanded health care because of your exposure to toxins and burn pits and particulate matter in those sandstorms in Iraq, that terrible particulate matter throughout Afghanistan. So those are the people, those are the vets, family members, survivors, that we really want to make sure come in and file a claim with VA so we can find out precisely what you qualify and get you those benefits and that care.
Now, we've known for a while Agent Orange exposure, burn pits created health challenges.
Yes.
What was the turning point in getting the legislation passed?
You know, it's just on Agent Orange now, it's been a fight for a long time for our Vietnam vets to convince the VA, to convince Washington that Agent Orange exposure was responsible for many of the health conditions that those vets have wrestled with since they got home. So this connection to hypertension and their service in Vietnam is something that Vietnam vets, veteran service organizations have been fighting for years. Importantly, those vets experiencing what they've experienced also went to bat as they read more and talked to more troopers who came out of Central Command over the course of the last 30 years. And they heard from them about some of their experiences, the conditions they're experiencing when they got back. And they went to bat, the Vietnam vets, for the Gulf War, Central Command War vets. And so what you see here, why now? It's a function of veterans, their family members advocating on behalf of themselves, saying, hey, let's bring VA up to date on this. And it's a function of the Vietnam vets going to bat for their brothers and sisters in arms, wanting to make sure that Those vets do not go through what our Vietnam vets went through.
Now, the VA started processing claims in January. How many have you processed so far, and is there a backlog?
Yeah, so we've, as of now, here in late summer, we've had more than 800,000 claims filed this year. 450,000 of those are PACT Act related claims.
Yes.
And so that first number, the 800, over 800,000 claims, is 30% more than this time last year. And last year was an historically high. So we're going to have the highest claims ever filed this year. The 450,000 PACT Act related claims, we have processed about 280,000 of those. And we're awarding those at 80%, okay? So that's to say, of the PACT Act related claims filed, 80% are found in the veteran's favor. That's historically very high for us. Now, the backlog is also going up. Right now we have about 260,000 claims in backlog. That's, when we came in January 2021, the backlog was at about that number. We've driven it down to as low as about 130,000. Now, because we're getting so many claims under the PACT Act, that number's gone up. But we're ready to handle that backlog number. We're going to bring that down aggressively. So much so, in fact, right now, that claims are being processed more quickly than ever in VA history.
Got it. So you just mentioned a historically high percentage for approving claims.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about how a claim is either substantiated or denied on behalf of the veteran.
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked the question. So here's the beauty of the new law, the PACT Act. It says the following. If you were, for example, one of the 4 million troopers who served in Central Command anytime between 1991 and 2021, remember what we're talking about here: Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Jordan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, and of course, Iraq and Afghanistan. If you served in any of those places and you have one of about 30 conditions or hundreds of associated conditions, we can connect those two things. The law says your being there and your having that condition are now connected, and we can get you a service rating. So what we need to do, what we need to substantiate, is your service in Central Command. We have that now. We've uploaded all those records as a digitized set of files in our system. Then we just have to, through either a look at your records or through an exam, establish what condition you have. It's not your job to figure out what condition you have. It's our job to work with you to figure that out. So it's on that basis. Were you there and do you have the condition that we make the award? Now, it's really important for family members to know and troopers to know, vets and active duty, that let's say you have a condition that's not presumed to be connected the way the law establishes it. You should still file a claim with us. And then we'll just go through the more laborious process with you to establish that connection. It will be less straightforward. The burden of proof is slightly higher for those conditions, but I don't want you to be dissuaded from filing that claim. And that's the way we do business at VA every day, no matter what. So the bottom line here is, Vietnam vet, exposed to Agent Orange, you have hypertension today, file your claim. Trooper who was in Central Command over those 30 years of war, file a claim with us. We'll get to the bottom of it.
So now you mentioned obviously a lot of different areas where service members served over a 30-year period between Desert Storm and Afghanistan, but this also includes Vietnam-era veterans as well. And so those are literally millions of veterans over a number of years, over a 50-year or so period. How is the VA communicating this to get the widest reach on this message about PACT Act benefits?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we've since last year, we've undertaken the most robust outreach program. We've built and we're now deploying the most robust outreach program in the history of VA. Too often at VA in the past, I think we thought, hey, let's make sure that people are aware of this, and then when they come to us, we'll get them signed up. We think that that's not right. We think rather today we ought to build our programs into the lives of veterans. We got to get into the communities where veterans are. So, for example, I just came back from one of the VSO conventions, actually 2 of them over the course of the last week. In each of those conventions, where thousands of vets and their family members turn out, we actually deployed not only a claims table, a set of claims experts who will help vets file claims. We actually deployed docs and examiners so we could process the claims right there at the conventions. So that's us trying to take VA to the veterans. During the middle part of the summer this year, July and August, we carried out more than 130 specific outreach events. Just over the weekend, we had one down at Tampa Bay at Tropicana Field with the Rays. We had several thousand vets at the game. We were helping them file their claims while they're at the game. That's us building our services into the lives of veterans, into the lives of veterans' families, because these are their benefits. We should make it much easier for them to get these benefits.
So what do you say to the veteran who expresses a concern that checking in on PACT Act benefits may put their other benefits at risk?
Yeah, we hear this. And part of this is the fact that, we had a lot of vets who worked really hard against a system that sometimes felt was rigged against them to get a service connection.
Yes.
And I can't blame them for feeling right now, hey, I went and I got this service connection. If I file, am I going to put that at risk? And they're hearing that from other vets. But I want to reassure them. And I want to reassure their families. I keep bringing up the family, Hal, because a lot of times our vets are going to listen to their spouse and their kids, by the way, because the spouse may benefit, the kids may benefit, and we can get into that later. They may listen to them more than they'll listen to me. And I don't blame them. So I'm here to reassure them that you are 32 times more likely to have an existing service connection increased or stay the same than to have it reduced. Now, I'd like to be able to say there's no circumstance under which you would have an existing service connection reduced. But here's the only way it would be reduced, is if we find out that something that you're getting cared for, like let's say you had hip replacement surgery, so during the pendency of your rehab, we are giving you a benefit. Well, if the hip is taken and you're not in rehab anymore and everything's back to normal, well, then we would reduce that. But that's the overwhelmingly rare instance. So again, please file a claim. It's relatively easy. I just read over the weekend there's a fella who did it in 30 minutes on his iPhone. Get it submitted, we'll process it through, and you are 32 times more likely to have your existing service rating increase or stay the same than go down.
Yes. So you mentioned family members, and the PACT Act applies to surviving family members. How do surviving family members go about navigating the system?
Yeah,
for
great question. Submission? Really important piece of business in this new law says a survivor who files can get pension, including retroactive pension. We call it DIC, okay? But that's a pension for a surviving spouse. You can get it retroactive if your veteran, your trooper, died of one of the covered conditions after having been deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, really anywhere in Central Command. So if you are a survivor, all you need to do is contact us at 1-800-MY-VA-411 or visit us at va.gov/PACT, va.gov/PACT, and we'll talk you through how to fill out a claim. Then we'll go through and establish that connection between your veteran and the condition, and when we're able to establish that service connection, we'll be able to pay you your retroactive benefits back to the moment, sadly, that your veteran passed.
Yeah.
Now, some of the vets we talk to and some of the family members we talk to think, wait a minute, the Vietnam vets, for example, I've made it plenty of years without VA. I don't need to get VA now. I'm fine. I'm covered by Medicare. I'm covered by, TRICARE for life. And we make this point to them that if you die of a service connection, a service-connected condition, your family then, your spouse, your survivor, then qualifies for pension for DIC. So if you haven't established that relationship with us, it'll be important for you as a vet. But I get that you may not, you may not want to do it. But please think about your family at that moment, because your service connection with us may end up opening the door to that pension for your spouse.
Yeah.
Sadly, after we're gone. And look, this is what, I'm not a vet, but this is what you guys do. You're constantly preparing. You're constantly thinking about your unit, and you're constantly thinking about your families. This is another opportunity to think about your family.
So let's talk about the folks that are still on active duty now.
Yep.
A number of people who are still wearing the uniform,
Yep.
served, particularly all over Southwest Asia,
Yep.
Iraq, Afghanistan, etc.
Mm-hmm.
What's the VA's message to them about the PACT Act benefits?
Yeah, thank you so much for that too, Hal. Look, we've now done something in the course of, we were talking earlier about our outreach campaign. We've done something really interesting thanks to Secretary Austin. And, talk about somebody who understands something about
Yes.
being deployed
Right.
in war, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, throughout Central Command, right? Operation Desert Storm, all the way through the global war on terrorism. So thanks to him, we've conducted outreach events at the Pentagon, where, there are some guys who are actually transitioning, so it's a much closer target for them. And then there's guys who are still active. And what we're saying to the active duty force is, hey, get to know us, right?
Yes.
And then come see us during that transition period, because we're here to serve you. And so you may not be, transitioning now. You may not be transitioning for a number of years, and that's a good thing. But we're here to serve you when you do. And, that's part of the deal, right? President Lincoln established VA
That's right.
at the height of the Civil War, right? Because he knew we had to take care of our troopers, their families, and their kids. That's expressly what he said in his second inaugural address. This is why I'm creating it. I take care of our troopers, their family, their spouses, and their kids. So President Biden calls that our one sacred obligation as a country. He says we've got a lot of obligations. This is our one sacred obligation. Train and equip you when you go into war, and then care for you and your loved ones when you get home. So to active duty force, we say, we're here for you. We don't want you to have to kind of weed through a bunch of paper and phone calls and maddening, phone trees to get us. We're here for you. We'll be there at the Pentagon for you. We'll be here online for you. And we have services, as you talked about at the beginning, that cover you, training for you, training and school for your kids, pension, support for your family.
Yes. Let's talk about another tough subject, veteran suicide.
Yeah.
Recently, the VA has announced a community partnership with literally 1,000 different community organizations. Tell us about that and how the VA is approaching this tough issue.
Yeah, so we have two really important partnership opportunities, both based on a very important concept, and that concept is that communities, families, units are going to know their veterans better than anybody else. So we have the Sergeant Fox Grant Program, which allows us, and we've now invested millions of dollars into local community organizations who know their vets best and who are using innovative new programming to support veterans in transition. It could be equine therapy. It could be in the case of in Arizona and New Mexico, we've partnered with a Navajo tribe who's using traditional communications and treatment methodologies to that tribe, a great warrior tribe with a tremendous record of service to the country. They're using those traditional methods to treat vets. So that's the first thing we're doing, is investing in them at the local level where people know vets best. And it could be, recreation therapy. It could be equine therapy, right? It could be service dogs, service animals. The second thing, we call it Mission Daybreak, which recognizes that, like VAs, we take really seriously the fact that we know a lot about PTS. We think that we know more about PTS given our history with treating vets. We think we know more than really anybody else. But we also know that there's great innovation outside of VA. So Mission Daybreak says, hey, let's find the most innovative, some technology-based, some traditionally, treatment-based interventions to make sure that those promising new therapies get investment from the federal government, so we can then take those to scale. That's the goal of these two programs.
Fantastic. A number of veterans will use their GI Bill benefits when they leave service, or they'll pass them along to their children. What's new in that area?
Yeah. So I want to just highlight two things for troopers who are thinking about their GI Bill benefits. One is the post 9/11 GI Bill allows you as a trooper to use the GI Bill benefits for yourself or to transfer them to somebody in your family. A lot of our troopers are transferring them to their kids.
Yes.
Amazing, right? So the transferability is new, one. Two, we are digitizing that program the way we're digitizing so much of the rest of VA services. So you don't have to sit down and work your way through reams of paperwork, right? We're trying to make this a much more user-friendly application, okay? So, in fact, you can visit us at va.gov, wherever you are in the process, and get a look at kind of how this can work out for you or your kids. Let me just call your attention to one last thing. It's called Veteran Readiness and Education, VR&E benefits, right? VR&E benefits are separate from and can be used in conjunction with your GI Bill benefits. So the VR&E benefit is important. You might even want to, some of our vets may decide that they want to use those before they use the GI Bill benefit. So why is that? Well, some of those can be very contained programming, training programs. We have something called Vet Tech, which allows a transitioning service member to get certified in certain activities around cyber defense, where as a country we have shortage of between 800 and 900,000 people.
Yes.
Talk about a highly employable skill, which, by the way, a bunch of our guys have by virtue of their service anyway, right? So VR&E not only gives you very usable skills, it comes with a counselor option, where those counselors are not only trained to help you through the program, but also trained to connect you to actual jobs in your community, wherever that community is, right? And so this is a market-based, it's not like one counselor is covering every market in the United States. If you're going back to Minnesota, which, I wish I were, but if you're going back to Minnesota, the VR&E counselor in Minnesota is going to understand what employers in Minnesota are looking for. And then what are training programs that can help you get the skills to get you straight into employment that allows you to get back home where you want to be with your family in a job and in a market where there's growth opportunity for you, and where those employers recognize that our active duty, our transitioning, and our vets have what America needs, right? What the American economy needs.
Excellent.
So take a look at the VR&E program, and then take a look at the digitized GI Bill programming. And I hope what your experience will be is a much more user-friendly experience.
Fantastic. Let's talk about you for a minute. So you've been very successful in your career. What was, for you, the best piece of mentoring advice that you received when you were a young person coming up? And then what do you tell the folks around you that you mentor on a daily basis?
Look, I mean, one of the best parts of my career has been the opportunity, Hal, to get to meet and to work with our active duty military folks. I'm not a vet. But over the kind of 20 years after 9/11, even you and I were talking earlier, you and I spent some time together during that period. I got to see up close something that is ingrained in you guys, and frankly, the rest of the country can learn from that, which is your warrior ethos to look out for each other.
Yes.
Right? So one of the things I aspire to do is to be a manager, a leader who has people who want to work for him, want to work with him. And one of the pieces of advice I got early was the best way to lead people, the best way also to manage people, is to make them think that you care about them. And the best way to make them think that you care about them is to care about them, right? And you see this all the time. I see this all the time with you guys, active and veteran. So that's what I try to do all the time. Get to know your people. Get to know their life. Get to know what's bothering them. When something's bothering them, find out what it is, and find out what you can do as a leader, as a manager, to help them through that. Because you know what? All we got is each other in this thing, right? And when we're working together, nobody's better, right? And by the way, when we're working together, it's much more satisfying. It's much more fulfilling. And so care about your people, right? And make sure that they know you care about them. That's the secret, I think.
Awesome. Mr. Secretary, anything else that you'd like to pass along to our audience today?
The one thing I just want to pass along to family members who are watching, troopers who are watching. There's that period when you're leaving. You know, some of you are on it now. Take a look at us right away and take advantage. There's always a period, we call it open enrollment period, after you transition. You may not need VA right now for healthcare. And I get that. But there might come a time in the next 10, 20, 30 years when you do want to have access to it. So just take a minute, file a claim, enroll with us. And I think there's a lot we can do for you now. a lot we can do for your kids, for your spouse. And there's a lot we can do for you. You may not avail yourself of it now, but when you choose to avail yourself of it, taking that couple of minutes during transition to establish formally the relationship with us will pay dividends over time.
Fantastic. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being with us again today. Our guest today has been Veterans Affairs Secretary, the Honorable Denis McDonough. We appreciate him joining us and sharing his insights into the key issues that impact our nation's heroes. I'm your host, Hal Pittman. Please join us for our next episode of Center Stage, where we'll continue to bring you some of the most interesting guests in national security, public policy, and business.